To start, and before we start, some practical information about the event. We have interpretation in 3 languages, so please feel free to choose Spanish, English, or French as the language of your choice. Also, for the questions, you have a Q&A button where you can click and ask your questions that we'll be taking at the Q&A session. And finally, this session is recorded. So if you wish to remain anonymous, don't forget to change your name in Zoom when you ask any questions. Buenos días a todos y todas. Bienvenidos al evento. Antes de comenzar, una información práctica. Tenemos interpretación en 3 idiomas, español, inglés y francés, así que pueden elegir su idioma. Para las preguntas y respuestas, tenemos un botón de preguntas y respuestas en el que pueden escribirlas y serán tomadas en la sesión de preguntas. Y la sesión será grabada. Para aquellos y aquellas que quieren permanecer anónimos, no duden en cambiar su nombre en Zoom. Bienvenue à toutes et à tous à notre événement d'aujourd'hui. Nous avons l'interprétariat. Donc, vous pouvez choisir votre langue, anglais, français ou espagnol. Pour les questions, il y a un bouton réponse et questions où vous pouvez écrire vos questions. Et enfin, vous avez, cette session sera enregistrée. Donc, si vous souhaitez garder votre anonymat, n'hésitez pas à changer votre nom. Now, I think we're ready to start. So I will give the floor to open our press conference to Alice Mogwe, President of FIDH. Alice, you have the floor. Alice, I think your microphone is muted.
Gracias. Bienvenido a todos y todas. It is my great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to the launch of #SeeYouInCourt, an international campaign to hold companies accountable for their harmful and polluting activities and their contribution to climate change. Before we start, we invite you to watch the video of our campaign, which you can also share on social media through the links in the chat.
Thank you. Sasha, you can now launch the video.
It's here, in this courtroom, that you'll have to answer for your disregard for human rights and the environment. It's here that those who were devastated by your actions will demand accountability. It's here, at this stand, that you'll be summoned to explain your harmful, polluting activities and the pressure you put on governments to conduct business at any cost. It's here that your lawyer will try to find the words to justify the unjustifiable. It's at this microphone that an expert will coolly describe the repercussions of your actions. It's from this bench that a member of the audience will rise to cry out in anger. And it's in this dock that you will await the verdict.
Thank you, Sasha. We'll now have the video in Spanish.
Es aquí, en este tribunal, donde tendrá que justificar su desprecio por los derechos humanos y el medio ambiente. Es aquí donde las comunidades afectadas le pedirán que rinda cuentas. Es aquí donde deberá explicar sus actividades nocivas y contaminantes y la presión que ejerce sobre los gobiernos para conseguirlas. Es aquí donde su abogado tratará de encontrar las palabras para justificar lo injustificable. Es detrás de este micrófono que un experto presentará fríamente el impacto de sus acciones. Es en este banco que un miembro del público se levantará y gritará su ira. Y es en este palco de los acusados donde esperará su veredicto.
Thank you, Sasha. Alice, you can take back the floor.
Thank you, Maria Isabel. Across the globe, the acceleration of the effects of climate change is absolutely undeniable. The most vulnerable populations are the ones who suffer more directly and intensely the impacts of climate change. They include the indigenous peoples, peasants, children, people with disabilities, and women from affected communities. Far from being passive victims, local communities are mobilizing at the front line, fighting for their rights and for the rights of nature to exist, thrive, and evolve, as opposed to merely being property for human benefit. Their struggles affect everyone because a safe, clean, and healthy environment is of utmost importance for the respect and exercise of the human rights for all. It is in solidarity with this struggle that FIDH and its member organizations are launching #SeeYouInCourt to reinforce the recognition and respect for the rights of nature. Deforestation, pollution, and environmental disasters are still commonplace in the value chains of multinational corporations. Since the start of the industrial era, just 100 companies are responsible for over half of the total emissions of greenhouse gases globally. Yet despite the growing concern from and the mobilization by a diversity of actors, a handful of these corporations continue their harmful and polluting activities with relative impunity. It is time to hold them accountable. Working collaboratively and in partnership with affected communities in Chile, Ecuador, and Colombia, FIDH and its member organizations are launching a
Alice,
series.
Is your microphone
Yes.
muted or your connection?
No, it's not muted. It's not muted at all. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? It's connected.
You can continue, Alice, we hear you.
From when, how far back?
The moderation just had a connection problem, but we heard you the entire time.
Okay. Working collaboratively and in partnership with affected communities in Chile, Ecuador, and Colombia, FIDH and its member organizations are launching a series of legal actions against businesses for their contribution to environmental degradation. Our campaign, #SeeYouInCourt, will bring together 3 pilot initiatives already underway and 2 actions which are being launched today to mark the starting point for many others. By launching this campaign, we aim to place center stage globally the daily struggles of our communities, and for this mobilization to spread through civil society, taking action against corporations in the next few months. By putting the affected communities at the center of these rights-based actions, we aim to remind ourselves that climate change is not an abstract concept of concern only to future generations, but is an immediate emergency for vulnerable communities who are already experiencing its impacts on their health and well-being on a daily basis. We call upon the public to support us in kind and financially, and to give visibility to our campaign for the fight for climate accountability to gain traction and to enable the legal protection of and for our common planet and its peoples. Gracias. I'm honored and proud now to turn to three key actors of this particular campaign who will share with you the nature of their fights and present the lawsuits which are being launched today. Rosa Maria Mateos, who's a lawyer, area of Reparación, Jose Alviar Restrepo Lawyers Collective from Colombia. Jose Alwin, who's coordinator of our Globalization and Human Rights Program, Observatorio Ciudadano from Chile. And Cata Alonso, who's a spokeswoman for the group Mujeres de Zonas en Sacrificio en Resistencia de Quintero y Puchuncaví in Chile. I will now give the floor to Maria Isabel Cubides, who is the interim head of the Globalization and Human Rights Office of FIDH. She will be moderating our panel today. Over to you, Maria Isabel, and my apologies for my attempt at pronouncing the names correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you very much. That was perfect. So in our campaign, local communities are not passive victims. They are the driving force in the long-term struggle against environmental destruction that threatens the enjoyment of human rights for all. Through our campaign, affected communities are taking back power, defying corporations and refusing to accept or be subjective to their violations. Around the table, we have today representatives from organizations and communities who filed today 2 of the pilot legal actions that seek to hold responsible actors accountable under the See You in Court campaign. These 2 actions target companies in the coal sector, which is the single biggest contributor to climate change. The burning of coal is responsible for 46% of carbon dioxide emissions worldwide and accounts for 72% of total greenhouse gas emissions from the electricity sector. The communities of Quintero Puchuncaví in Chile have suffered the concrete impacts of polluting emissions from coal-fired plants, and this is why today, together with the Observatorio Ciudadano and Fundación Terram, they filed a constitutional action in response to the environmental degradation linked to the operation of coal-fired power plants operated by AES Gener and the failure of the environmental authorities to effectively regulate and sanction their harmful activities. I will thus give the floor first to Cata Alonso, spokeswoman from the local organization in Chile, Mujeres en Zonas en Sacrificio en Resistencia en Quintero Puchuncaví in Chile, that for 17 years has been in the struggle to defend their rights and the environment from the ever-growing activities of polluting industries in the region. Cata, ¿de qué manera puedes contarnos la polución causada por las centrales de carbón?
Tu nous expliques comment la pollution entretenue par cette centrale au charbon a une incidence sur la vie des communautés et pourquoi. Could you explain why this is so important to bring this to the courts in Chile? Could you share with us
Muchas gracias.
your experience? Thank you very much, says Cata. Hello everyone. The problem is that we want our children to be safe. We want water to be clean. We want the air to be breathable. Life is not to be a boat. It has to be saved. We have communities and we want to do this for the children so that we could benefit from all our human rights which have been affected, which are being affected every day. I live in a zone of sacrifice. This means that we have a lot of pollution of heavy metal in the soil, in the air, in water, in fresh water, in salt water, in the up to 8 kilometers, we have 19 dangerous and polluting industries. Among the communities of Puchuncaví and Quintero, where we live, there are 50,000 people living there. Within the companies, one of the most polluting and one that is at the highest point responsible for this is a multinational company on the territory of Puchuncaví. There are 4 coal-burning electricity generating electricity. Some of them are less than 100 meters away from the place where people live. So this is totally deteriorating our territory, where previously people lived from fisheries and farming and tourism. In those days, we had an excellent quality of life. But these factories have had extremely severe effects on the health of our communities. Our communities has one of the highest level of cancer, of pulmonary diseases, neurological diseases, respiratory, chronic respiratory problems, infarctus, cardiovascular problems, allergies, asthma, and many cases of autism. Since 2008 and until now, we have had seen that severe intoxication were present with our children. It's between 2011 and 2018 that this was the most severe. More than 1,500 children have had to go to emergency services because they had breathed in polluting gases produced by this industry. Some of these children have still severe consequences, and we still don't know today because authorities are not providing any information at all. We don't know exactly what is it that we are breathing. And this is probably slowly killing us. I would like to take this, the company remains continues to act in an extremely illegal way, which this means that more and more coal is being burned and more greenhouse effect gases are being emitted way over what is permitted by our state. This has a direct incidence on our fundamental human rights, like the right to life, the right to live in a safe environment, clean, without any polluting agents, and also the right to equality. This transnational company, ICE Sanders in Chile, has 17 coal-powered power stations. 4 of them in this zone, Huasco, Topología, Mejillones, Puchuncaví, are all in our area. The air was declared to be severely polluted by the gas emitted by this company. This company produces more CO2 today in Chile, which is harmful for the environment and our health, but also the health of the planet as a whole. We would like to say as well that the Playa de Ventanas and Chuncaví in this place, starting in 2019 and until now, there were 900 coal deposits. This coal belongs to the ES company, and until now the authorities have not corrected anything to correct this extremely severe situation.
Thank you very much for this very lively intervention that clearly illustrates the close interconnection and interdependence between environment and human rights, and particularly how the destruction of the environment has an undeniable impact on the right to health of communities. Jose Aylwin, I will As coordinator of the Globalization Human Rights Program of the Observatorio Ciudadano, and together with Terram, you have been at the side of communities in Valparaíso, building and bringing forward the legal action launched today against the Chilean authorities and AES-GENER. So I will invite you to take the floor and ask you to help us with the following question. José, ¿cuál es la naturaleza de la acción que interpone hoy las comunidades de Quintero y Puchuncaví?
What's the nature of the interaction of the communities in the Chilean courts? What is it that they're trying to get through this action, through this activity? Well, thank you. Hello to everyone, and congratulations to FIDH, which has invited us to take part in this campaign. I'm extremely grateful to all those who are listening to the launch today. Having in mind the fact that Cata Alanson has just described, the Observatorio Ciudadanos, the Citizen Observatory, which is part of FIDH. It's an organism which is based in Chile, and which represents the organizations in the region of Quintero and Puchuncaví. We have lodged in recourses of amparo in the appeal court in Valparaíso. This is where these coal-burning power plants are situated. Today, they are called AES Andes, and the recourse was presented against the environmental authority, which is the environmental superintendency in Chile, because of the arbitrary nature and irregularities in the fact that there was there are a lot of delays in the dealing with the complaint that was filed in 2020, which had to do with the non-respect of the maximum power level that was authorized for this the power plant between the year 2017 and 2020. So, according to law, which sets the rules, there should have been an information provided on the result of a complaint within 60 days. We've already waited for over a year since the complaint was filed. So there was all sorts of measures were taken, but nothing gave any result. So we now point to the fact that the Chile state is not respecting the major principle of the United Nations for companies on human rights. The states have to protect the population, human right, against violation committed by companies by adopting measures, by making inquiries and correcting the inequalities, all things which have not been done in this case. There are a number of mechanisms which are effective. They were not used as either. The action is also aimed against the AES-GENER company, AES Andes, and Ventanas Electrical Company, for the fact that they continue to not respect the highest level of power which are allowed for this power plant in the Nueva Ventanas power plant, and so the fact that they do not respect this due diligence in terms of human rights. This is what we're going to indicate in our complaint. All the arbitrary actions of this company include the exploitation of the Nueva Ventanas power plant between 2017 and 2020. For several thousand of hours, they went above the limit authorized. Similarly, for the Campeche power plant during the same period. But the most severe, the most that we've mentioned, is the Nueva Ventanas power plant has continued between January and September this year, and still is 48% above the limit that has been set by the environmental authorities of the state. We also indicate that with this practice, AES Gener and its subsidiaries have very clearly violated the due diligence and the duty to respect human rights without taking any account of the due diligence that should have been put in place that would have prevented this impact on human rights. As for the rights themselves, there is the right to life, of course, the right to physical integrity and physical and mental integrity of the population living in the area of Quintero and Puchuncaví. The maximum power of these power plants has been not respected in the past, but today we can see that coal is burned way above the set limits, which produces a lot of polluting, which has a strong effect on the local population, including children, as this was the case during the environmental crisis in 2008. We have to add to this violation to the rights to equality in front of the law because of the delay in the way the demands were examined in the courts, but also the right of living in a pollution-free environment. This is a constitutional guarantee, but this is also a right coming from the international treaty as interpreted by the United Nations. Contributing in generating greenhouse gases, which cause climate change, the state of Chile had committed itself to fight against such effect because it signed in 2015 the Paris Agreement. I still remember the interpretation of the Special Reporter Boy, who has established the responsibility of the companies to guarantee a safe climate. The fact that they had to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in their subsidiaries. For all these reasons, we are requesting the tribunal, firstly, to ask the Chilean superintendents to explain and to make public the results of the plaint that has been deposited in 2020 within 15 days, and to start a processes of sanctions against AES Gener and its subsidiaries, following all the irregularities that have been noted. The AES Andas and Electric Ventanas have to refrain from exceeding the maximum power authorized by the authorities in order to respect that limit and limit it in the future in order to compensate the maximum power of this power plant in the same proportion as what had been in excess in the 3 previous years. So this is what we are requesting today. We hope that the inquiry will bring results very quickly. Thank you.
I will now jump to Colombia.
Thank you very much, Jose, for your presentation.
All participants to start writing down their questions in the Q&A section. So let's move to Colombia. In La Guajira, the largest open pit coal mine in Latin America has been a looming threat for the unique endangered tropical dry forest ecosystem that is home to the Wayuu people and as well as Black and farming communities. The action launched today by these communities and our organizations call upon the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights to order precautionary measures to prevent irreversible damage to the cultural, economic, and spiritual life of these peoples and their ecosystems they depend on, by the diversion of the Bruno stream to make a way for the expansion of this open pit coal mine owned by Anglo-American, Glencore, and BHP. So Rosa Maria, I'll give you now the floor. Rosa Maria, quisiera preguntarte por qué es clave llevar esta acción.
I wanted to ask you a few questions about the situation, what is the situation right now to protect nature in this environment.
Te doy la palabra.
So, Rosa Maria, you have the floor. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to you all. As we have already said, we are talking about real areas of sacrifice. The Guajira and other areas of Latin America are sacrificed area. We've already had descriptions of it in the Guajira area. One of the companies that leads to a whole series of dangers to the ecosystem is the Cerrejón multinational. And despite this capture by the state on a part of these multinationals, we want justice, effective, real justice, because despite these different tragedies, we keep having hope for justice. We hope that that society will join us. Today, the Guajira communities are going to present to the Inter-American human rights system a series of precautionary measures so that these multinational corporations respect through the Colombian Constitutional Court, respect human rights. We have the Bruno stream. It's a major affluent stream, and without it, the pseudo-tropical system, the system is endangered, as well as the spiritual link that these communities have, the Wayuu communities have with it. So these are, and as well as the farming communities and the Black communities. So we have spoken out against the strategies carried out by these multinational companies. We are also talking about the strategies of the multinationals, all the pressures. For example, they filed a complaint against the Colombian state through an arbitration system called CAD. We are also saying today that when there was impact studies carried out by public policies, when you do these impact studies on open mines, when these studies are carried out, we have actually highlighted many interference from multinational corporations that mine coal, and the exclusion of the Wayuu communities, the peasant communities, and the Black communities, African communities that are directly impacted. I'd actually like to point out that in 2017, through a decision of a Colombian constitutional court, the basic rights of the population were respected. Basic rights like right to water, to food, to air. And normally, we need to, they will be respected thanks to a commission that is there to monitor the situation. Despite this decision, the multinational refuses to respect this, and this multinational has actually imposed its will, and the stream still has been deviated from its natural course. There have been threats as well. This causes more problems in the region. So that is why we went to the Inter-American system to make sure that these commitments are respected. It's important to stress that part of this campaign also includes a presentation on the behalf of native communities, the Guajira local organizations, national organizations, who've carried out a series of actions whose objective is to seek justice. This is an urgent action because Bruno Stream must go back to its natural bed, and we need to respect the ancestral rights of these autochthonous populations and make sure that the environmental and ecological rights are respected. We have highlighted these disbalances. Our grouping of lawyers, the Jose Alvia Resposo grouping of lawyers, is answering this call. We support the call from these communities to give them our support so that they can use all legal tools available to highlight the real actions of these multinational corporations. So we also give our support and would like to thank all the organizations who are by our sides, and also those who work with us through FIDH, and all those who work for the defense of the environment and who fight for capture by multinationals who endanger the environment and many communities. Colombia is a very important country for those that defend the environment. That's what the latest report of Global Witness says. So we have worked to support these demands in face of the environmental emergency. Impunity no longer is a possibility. Thank you, Rosa Maria. Thank you very much.
I will now conclude very quickly before opening a Q&A session by saying that hashtag See You in Court is not just the filing of two legal actions today. It is the starting point of a long-term effort to bring polluters to account for their contribution to climate change and environmental degradation through a diversity of rights-based actions led by affected communities. Because protecting human rights is protecting nature is protecting human rights, and the other way around. Given the emergency of the climate crisis, courts must help guarantee the rights of people and nature against governmental and corporate inertia. By launching See You in Court, we are saying also that we cannot wait any longer. While we meet business in court to request they bear their share of responsibility, we will keep pushing for governments to seize the historical opportunities to overcome the blind spots of environmental policies, corporate accountability. So for opening our QA session, I will first welcome to the panel also Clémence Bectat, coordinator of FIDH Litigation Action Group. Thank you, Clémence, for joining us today in answering the many questions that I'm sure all the participants have here around the table. So for the Q&A session, we will not be able to give you the floor. Please click on the Q&A section and you will be able to write down your question. For starters, we have an important question from the floor. And this question is addressed to Rosa Maria. I'm going to read it in Spanish for you to be able to respond. Al señalar que las instancias judiciales internas no pudieron dar solución a la emergencia ambiental, se refiere a que no dieron razón a la comunidad indígena. A pesar de ello, la prensa no cumple con reparar el daño ambiental.
They haven't been able to give their rights
Rosa
to
María, ¿quieres
populations.
tomar la palabra
The
para
international
responder a la
community
pregunta?
is not respecting basic rights. Jose Maria, would you like to take the floor to answer? Yes, please. Thank you very much. Yes, indeed. There were different elements involved. The multinational is already the object of a series of decisions against it. With our colectivo, based on talking about colectivo, when we saw what was happening. We saw that these rulings are not applied. So we are denouncing the asymmetrical situation these communities are in and a non-respect of these decisions. So the objective is to put into practice, to apply these rulings of a court. So the court must also monitor this aspect. So these communities tell us that every single day, it's the death of the Bruno stream. Every day it's dying slowly. And the communities do not have a technical wherewithal to, well, keep up with this. And the bodies of the state don't have it either. So that's why we've chosen to go to the inter-American system so that these authorities force the application of these decisions, of these legal decisions, and for there to be the necessary, well, monitoring of a situation. Thank you very, Jose Maria. We have a whole series of questions. We have a question from Gustavo Gomez. So he is the Justice Secretary of Argentina. He recognizes the efforts of the campaign, and he's aware of the challenges involved and recurring to criminal bodies and regional bodies or international bodies. And the question is, why not give the capability to NGOs, to the citizens and the victims to start the penal instruction in investigations in courts and then monitor this. So I'm now going to give the floor to my colleague for him to be able to answer. Yes, thank you very much. This is a very important question indeed. As we know, the right to a healthy environment is the result of a process, a progressive process and global process. So it's very important to really turn crime into environment into something that is well defined, but it's a long-term process. It's growing. I think it's a brilliant initiative to be capable as a citizen or as a community that's directly impacted for there to be the use of the existing laws and national and international mechanisms that exist. And once these environmental crimes, according, of course, if law allows for it, are defined, we also need to know that these are mechanisms that are quite limited. This leads us to, as is our case, actually, to go this recourse in constitutional protection to guarantee very important rights for the environment, right to life, to physical integrity, to health, which is threatened or endangered by the actions of multinational
Yes, hello everyone.
Clémence, you have the floor.
Thank you for this very interesting question. Of course, we're facing their major obstacles. First is the insufficiency of the legal framework that needs to be improved, especially when it comes to facing corporate criminal accountability. And the idea and object of this campaign is to find all legal avenues, be them as we've seen, constitutional, where jurisdictions offer interesting legal avenues to pursue in this regard, but also to advocate in favor of the improvement of the legal framework in order to multiply the possibilities for the affected communities to act on the basis of legal actions. So it is a field for huge improvement, but of course, the object of this project and campaign is also to share experience and to find every legal avenues possible for the affected communities to challenge corporate accountability. And of course, we have in mind the importance of challenging criminal corporate accountability for environmental and climate-related violations when it is possible.
Thank you very much, Clémence. It is definitely part of our campaign to bring together organizations, that is also a way to reinforce our capacity to act against corporations and to tip the balance of power as well, where too often communities are on the weak side. And so by coming together, we're coming stronger. Hay una pregunta de parte de...
There's a question from the CCA. They'd like to know how they can support for cases to have a larger impact. How other organizations of civil society and organizations that are on the ground can work. And this question is also repeated by Natalie Rengifo. She'd like to know how the campaign is organized. And the international companies, what is being done to support them? So firstly, to answer these questions, I'd like to ask Cata. Cata, maybe you could share how, from the point of view of the community, and with the help of the community, local community, the Observatorio Humanitario, the FIDH, what impact has it has, and maybe what other way is there of supporting this? In truth, I didn't have one single answer. It's extremely important. All the support, both nationally and internationally, to recur to the support, both national and international. We've also called upon this, the United Nations and a Universal Periodic Review. We've knocked on all doors. The only way to make sure that this is going to progress, to prevent this impunity, is to unite our strengths. We believe in the possibility to unite our forces through alliances with local, national, international associations.
For this sharing of experience. I see a question from Javier Mujica. Pregunta, ¿de qué modo la FIDH puede colaborar con las comunidades y los abogados a través de
fighting complaints against those who do not respect human rights and to violate extraterritorial rights and economic, social, environmental rights? This question is a key question and it's a key part of the actions we are presenting today. Actually, a few months ago, FIDH with the Observatorio Ciudadano filed a complaint in French courts against a French multinational corporation that is operating in Chile. And maybe José could share a few points to answer Javier's question.
Claro, gracias Javier por esa pregunta y efectivamente
thank you.
Responsabilidad de los estados por la actividad
it's the state's responsibility.
en ellos domiciliados que violan los derechos
Oh, the interpreter can't hear, sorry.
de sus fronteras es un tema emergente en el derecho internacional.
This company has headquarters in a third country, in this case in France, and they have subsidiaries in Latin America, for example. It's true, very few countries have the possibility in a legal arsenal, the possibility to go to court, to take to court companies whose headquarters are in other countries like GDF Suez. GDF Suez, in this case, was taken to court and in the case of Chile, there's pollution of the drinking water because of another corporation. But as the Suez Group, with its water treatment plant is also responsible, we found a tool linked to the due diligence, duty for due diligence, which is linked to this pollution of drinking water, but very few states have this mechanism. That's why with the FIDH and other our organizations and alliances, we have suggested the drafting of a binding treaty that forces states to establish mechanisms for this extraterritorial responsibility to be effective. And within this mechanism, this legal mechanism, for it to be in their legislation. That was an answer to your question. Thank you very much, Jose. Now, Yvonne and Agnes, question: how can we avoid company, even to well, revenge on the affected communities, the impacted community, like threatening to withdraw economic support, for example? Well, Rosa Maria, you're very close to the communities in the Guajira region. Maybe you could give us an idea or your point of view on how the solidarity of civil society can strengthen these actions. Yes, certainly. This is a very important question, and it's an extremely urgent one. We must focus on this. We see there's lots of abuses of power we go through. The exhausting of our strong. It's a mechanism that leads to hatred. Multinational corporations are going to try and make people hate defenders. They've been stigmatized, defamed, ostracized. They say, well, human rights defenders are in the environmental right defenders are against progress and development. But what kind of development do we want when you see the damage to the environment? We believe it's extremely important to make a show of solidarity and start to have diagnoses, create lots of info, document these attacks. So we found something that's quite well thought out, veiled threats that make the most of an asymmetry of power. These multinational create a sort of economic panic because they say they're going to close the mine down, they're going to close the company down, and that scares people. They brew fear, and they say, see, thousands of workers are going to be laid off. The state won't have any more resources because of companies paying corporate tax, and that is going to lead to utter chaos. So that creates conflicts amongst the populations. That's what we need to speak out about. We've made various calls for help with several international fora like the United Nations to protect the leaders, the defenders and the protectors of the environment. But civil society needs to follow step. These defenders, if they are in this situation, a situation where they're harassed, this is the responsibility of a state, of multinational corporation, because it's through their own discourse that
Thank you
there
very
is this
much,
kind of
Maria.
conflict that occurs.
We have another question, this time addressed to
Une autre
our colleagues in
question
Chile.
de nos
Wendy
collègues
asked
au Chili.
a José cómo abordar judicialmente el cumplimiento de los principios rectores de derechos humanos de AES
So,
Andes.
for
Si bien está
judicial
claro que no
power,
han cumplido con el due diligence ni con la reparación, tampoco estamos
for
hablando de un instrumento de carácter
the
obligatorio.
principle,
Igualmente,
I'd
abordar
like to
los
ask
principios
Jose, how we can touch the management of a guiding principle of a DDDH, the due diligence duty of ISANDES. It's clear they haven't respected the due diligence rules. How can we approach upon a situation? Jose, could you please give us an answer? Thank you, Pablo. It's a real challenge, yes. The principles, the guiding principles concerning corporate duty are not binding. They're binding in what has to do with the state's obligation to protect human rights. And then there's a whole series of mechanisms in the law of the states. We can say they're violating the right to live, the right to a healthy environment. So, and environmental rights, basically. So we have indeed used national law. Firstly, because of a non-respect of environmental law. It's important to refer to this and use this framework, even when we're aware of the fact that there are a few limitations when you talk about the responsibility of this court. Thank you, Jose. It's very important indeed. And I do think but there are a few decisions that talk about these guiding principles and recognized standard principles impose obligations to these corporations.
Si bien no jurídicamente vinculante, como
beyond the recognition of these norms and standards, if they're not binding legally, at least it's a reference point. It's a framework we can use to strengthen the legal framework.
Who congratulates us for the project, for opening this path for affected communities in our common struggle. She mentions in Asia, where there are serious gaps in the rule of law, see you in court is urgently needed as we anticipate more corporate impunity as governments try to regain export revenues lost during COVID. Thank you, Debbie. Thanks to you and to all the organizations that have either formally joined or behind the scenes supported this to make it possible. And this gives me the chance and the opportunity to give the floor to Clémence, because I think there is a lot of interest to know how to support and to spread the campaign. And there are many ways you can do that. Clémence.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Maria Isabel. First of all, as we announced it and Maria Isabel told you, it's the beginning of an ambitious project for FIDH. We have today 11 member organizations who have joined the project and the campaign and who are currently exploring new legal actions against corporations for their impact on environment, climate change, and human rights. We are also welcoming new member organizations who would like to join, either because they are exploring new cases or because they're in the way of filing new legal actions. Our ambition and goal is to continue to provide legal support, to provide also a space for dialogue, exchange of experiences among our member organizations. We see that there are very often common trends on the obstacles that are faced by the communities, but also by local NGOs on the ground trying to build these cases and to file them and to go to court. So we will continue to provide that kind of legal support, but also technical and scientific expertise, and again, to share experience and to be together to build stronger strategies for the future. So it is, of course, possible to join the project and of course, to support the campaign. And Maria Isabel will tell you a little bit more about how to actively support and relay the campaign that is launched today.
Thank you so much, Clemence. I think this, so as the questions in the lineup end up, lead us to the closing of our press conference. I just would like to say that thank you for joining, and to help us accelerate this movement, we have 3 key messages. To states, take concrete actions. You have many opportunities. Next week at the Human Rights Council, next month at the EU level, and at the COP26. To all of you, support, disseminate, donate to allow local communities to continue the fight. And to civil society, join us bringing new cases to hold polluters accountable. Thank you all of you for having joined us today. But thank you to everyone has made this possible. We have, together with the video and all the information that you find in social media, you can also see our landing page where you will find all the reference out, the details of the 3 legal actions that have been launched prior to the press conference and the 2 legal actions that are filed today, as well as the communication toolkit and the contacts if you want to join the campaign, but also if you want to donate to strengthen our movement and make further actions possible. Before closing, I want specifically to thank the interpreters that have allowed our conference to be held in 3 languages today. To the globalization team, Anna, Sasha, Emi, and Madalena. The communications agency, Babel, thanks to whom all the visuals of the campaign are possible. Olivia de Schutter, also, who was at the very start of this project, pushing us to move forward. To the 11 member organizations who are part of the campaign to date, but also to the many who will join after. And to the communications department, and particularly to Anne Vesk, for whom this will be the last campaign with FIDH. Thank you, Anne, and bon vent. With this, I will close our event and hope to see you soon for the companies in court and for you in action.